This is Kia Miller, and I'm coming to you live from Boulder, Colorado. I'm staying in a friend's house. I'm here for a leg of a tour that's been going on for a little while now. And I wanted to share a little bit with you today about the power of Kundalini Yoga. It's a lot of what I teach, the techniques and practices that really do lead us from darkness to light. So my real agenda here today is to communicate why I feel Kundalini Yoga offers a way for us all to cut through the busyness of life and access our center, which in truth is the place of true creativity and potential. And my intention is to really inspire you to utilize and look into these practices, because these are tried and true skills and tools that help to cut through a lot of the hypnotic trance that many of us are feeling in our daily life right now. So my intention here is that we all get inspired to do this. So right off the bat, I just want to know, for those of you who are watching, and I can see a few of you, Jeff Crochet, I see you joined, fantastic. So I just want to know, as you're watching this, can you watch it with an intention of seeing yourself doing some of the things that I'm talking about and implementing these subtle but potentially powerful changes in your life? And so I'm going to start a little bit just to let you know how I found out this practice was so powerful. I actually started yoga when I was 15. I established a practice for many, many years that was opening my body, that was strengthening my body, that was giving me some mental calm. But there was always that sense, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this in your life, that something was missing, that I wasn't yet fully embodied or activated. I didn't really know my purpose or what it was that I wanted to do. But my practice was definitely serving to keep me in a physically embodied state. But then Kundalini Yoga came along, and through the powerful practices, I started to shift my energy a lot more profoundly, and I started to access much different states of consciousness and start to cultivate from the inside out the kind of confidence that I'd been looking for outside of myself for so many years. And so I then started to share these practices with students, and that was the greatest joy, just to see people's hearts and minds turned on, because they were accessing different levels of vitality and energy through the practices. And I think even parallel to that is watching people absolutely purge and move through a lot of the emotional debris that keeps us chained and bound to old ways of behaving and old ways of being. So I really want to illuminate for you as we go through this some key ways that we can, on a daily basis, using this Kundalini Yoga, we can keep that kind of continuous refinement, cleansing, awakening, and refinement happening within ourselves, so that our life path is effortless, and that sense of knowing what to do and when to do it becomes effortless. So that's really the joy of Kundalini Yoga. What I then found was I created my own sort of brand, if you like, just because that's what we do in this modern world, isn't it? We have to brand. So I did that really but my brand is simply, it's Kundalini Yoga that has been that is presented in a way that all of us, everyday people, can grasp it. It takes it out of the esoteric tradition and teachings and into a very daily applicable practice that helps to cut through where we are bound. So from there, I started to get invited to yoga conferences, and I started to get to share this on a broader level. And I've just been off a tour doing that, and it just It is so rewarding to see all the yogis who have been practicing Hatha Yoga for so many years and have really developed a sthira, a steadiness in their practice, and an ease in their physical body. But to see those practitioners get turned on to Kriya, the combination of postures and energy and breathing that is Kundalini Yoga, to see people get turned on to that and get lit up from the inside out. And to me, that's true radiance. It's like when someone flips that switch inside you, and all of a sudden, all that you were seeking is there, realized in yourself, and you recognize it as presence, as confidence, as a pure state of energy, as a state of recognition of yourself, where this is my understanding, my true understanding of intuition, is knowing the right thing to do in the moment, where you're in an absolute neutral mind. You're not questioning yourself anymore. And because you know the right thing to do in the moment, you can foresee where that action is going to take you, because there's no cloudiness and there's no doubt there. So these are some of the things that I start to witness in people as I'm on the road, as they're practicing Kundalini Yoga. So, would you like to understand, I guess my question to you is, and I'll try to read things on here as we go, just throw a few things, questions that you have about Kundalini Yoga, and I'll see if I can catch them on here whilst talking at the same time. There's this new modern technology. Who knows? But here's the thing. I really want you guys to understand and start to access how to increase your energy and vitality. So as we go through this webinar, I'm going to talk about, let me see, just pull out my notes so I can stay. So I'm going to talk about how Kundalini Yoga works and why it's the perfect practice for this era. And this is a very interesting subject, and I think it's informing and empowering to us, any of us as yoga practitioners. And I want to give an understanding of the key practices or key approaches to yourself, which all of those of us in yoga have come to understand, who are taught about this model of the physical, the energetic, and the mental body. So understanding how to utilize the practice to create a sense of balance and ease on all those levels of our being, so that ultimately we access our spirit. And then understanding why Kundalini Yoga and any of these pranic-based practices are systematic in their approach. We have to go at the practice, in other words, in a systematic way. And I'll describe why we have to do that when we get to that portion. And then also I want to look at key practices or perspectives that you might want to have in order to bring these practices on a daily basis into your life, because that true transformation starts to occur when it's the little bit done every day with commitment. Like that starts to mold our being in a certain way and allows us to become a lot more receptive to the accessing and understanding of our true potential. And if there's anything that Kundalini Yoga is about, which really is what all yoga is about, it's how do we access our true potential? Because I believe, and what is stated in many of the yogic texts, we are living just at a fraction of what is truly possible for us. So what could be possible if we unlocked all the other layers of our being, or if we unlocked that kind of potential Kundalini, Mahashakti, or the greatest energy? And that's what's really interesting to me. We can already see on a technology level what's been unlocked for us. Just the fact that I could be doing this now with relative ease. Imagine unlocking this kind of potential within yourself to pure creativity. where we're no longer wavering in our lives, but we're accessing that stream and we're realizing our potential. So that's a little sort of the flow of what I wanted to share here tonight. So I'm just going to check in with you. Megan, you said that you have me on the screen and Tommy on another. I love that. Darsh, you also joined. Hi. And hi, Polly. And hi, Lorena. I'm so happy you guys are here. Those are just the ones that I can see on my small screen. So let's look at why is Kundalini Yoga so popular right now, or at least why is it becoming a lot more attractive to people? And I just wanted to put it in this context of the world that we're living in right now, the chaos and the polarization that we're witnessing in the world, and the polarization that we experience within ourselves, the cloudiness, the self-doubt, the self-judgment, the judgment of others, the guilt, the shame, all of these emotions that are constantly informing our experience of the now. How do we cut through all of that aspect of our being so that we can experience the purity and the clarity of who we are? And this is why I believe Kundalini Yoga is such a powerful practice, because it delivers us to that refined state of consciousness where all of the noise of our being suddenly silences, and we get to access that state where our energy has been lifted from dullness. It's been lifted up, and as soon as we energize energy, then it becomes lighter and more expansive. So we go from a dull state to a lighter and more expansive state. And when that happens, we stop becoming so self-limiting. We stop becoming so much about just me and experiencing life as me separate from you or from everything else. As soon as that energy is enlivened and you start to experience its vastness, then you start to experience yourself as connected to the whole. And now we're not looking at life anymore from the eyes of competition, but we start to look at life from the eyes of collaboration. And we start to open up, therefore, the potential that exists once we access that state. So in my experience, the practices of Kundalini Yoga, because they're so dynamic, they're so potent with the inclusion of specific powerful breaths within dynamic movements, and those being put together in a sequence of postures, sometimes with a mental mantra focus as well. You put all of that together, and now very soon you have this way of enlivening energy, of directing it where you want it to go, and then stabilizing it in that new vibration, in that new frequency. And this may sound very esoteric to you, and you may be thinking, well, how is that really applicable? And when I do Kundalini Yoga, I don't feel that. And there's many other things you may be saying in this moment. And in my experience and my 20 plus years of practice of Kundalini Yoga now, is that a lot of what I'm describing is happening on a very subtle level. And as you practice more and more, and as you develop your sensitivity to the subtle, then you start to understand and experience the subtle movement of energy. And I'll talk about this a little more in a moment when I really lay out the physical, the energetic, and the mental. But what Kundalini Yoga has done for me is it unlocked my experience of energy. And it's refined, and I've developed my understanding of how to move that energy. And this is one of the most key tools. And this refers back to why Kundalini Yoga is such a powerful practice for this time. Because if we are actually to begin to shift our state and not get stuck in depression, not get stuck in anxiety, and not get stagnant in our energy in any way, then we need practices that can cut through that and deliver us to that state of higher mind. And this is why it's a systematic practice, which I'll get to in a moment. There's a process that we go through. So I'll keep going down my line so I don't get lost here. So, in short, what is Kundalini? It's the energy of awareness. And that's there's a depiction within yoga, right, of the crown chakra, of this 1,000-petaled lotus that sits on the crown of the head, and each one of those petals represents another aspect of our awakened consciousness, or awareness, you could say. So the more we practice, the more we develop awareness about ourselves and our relationship with others and the world, then we start to live in this more kind of awakened aware state. That is really the purpose of all yoga, and specifically Kundalini is that energy of awareness that we are developing. So, second point here is understanding the key practices that balance the physical, emotional, and mental bodies. So on the physical level, so here's, and I'm going to merge this in a little bit with the third one, which is the step-by-step process. Because if we're out of touch with our bodies, if we're eating foods that we really wish that we didn't eat, if we are choosing inactivity over activity, then this is really the first base. We want to start there with the activation of the physical body. Now, all those of you who've been practicing yoga for a long time, you've been in that process of activating and strengthening your nervous system, of purifying the energetic channels in the body, which happens, through a regular asana practice. So all of this is like great preparation. And inevitably, what happened for me anyway, when I was doing my Ashtanga and Hatha practice, just showing up every day on the mat, moving through the stagnation in my body, opening myself up, it was making me more sensitive, and it was particularly to what I was eating. So it's really important to kind of establish, in a way, this right relationship with the very physical nature of our being, the physical body, and to treat this body with the most respect that we can in terms of what we put into it. And that plays a big part in the accessing of this energy of awareness and the accessing of our pranic energy. If a lot of our energy is going into digesting food, it's very hard to experience the subtler states that we are inviting or calling upon, that kind of allow us to access sort of our potential, if you like. So physical body, very important. And that's really seen in yoga as the first sheath, and it's what most of us are so self-identified with. And yet, inevitably, as we get older, we notice that the physical body is constantly in a process of change. And we start to, hopefully, get a little bit less attached to the way we look. And we go more into connecting to increasing our vitality, staying vital and staying clear in our life. And it's through the energetic and the mental bodies that we do that. So if we establish a base and we get the physical body taken care of, amazing. Then we go on to the energetic level. And the key about the energetic level is that we have to really awaken energy in our body. Any of you know, if you hang around on the couch too long, if you binge watch some TV series, your mind gets really intense through whatever it is you're watching, but your body gets into a more and more stagnant state, sort of lethargic and dull. And inevitably, just sleeping takes us into that lethargic, dull state. It has to on the physical level. So then we need to enliven that energy. This is where the breath comes in. The breath, particularly the powerful breaths, like breath of fire, like Vastrika, like Kapalabhati. These are strong breaths driven from the navel. When we do these breaths, we start to enliven the energy body, and then we start to access what I mentioned earlier, that lifting effect, the expansive effect, where we stop feeling so heavy and we start feeling lighter. So the genius of the Kriyas within Kundalini Yoga is that you awaken and access that prana, if you like, the life force, the energy of your body, and then in a very systematic way, pose by pose by pose, you subtly direct that energy from one place to the next. So rather than, like in Hatha, you're very much focusing on the muscles, the joints, the postures. When you do Kundalini Yoga, you do a movement, not for the strength or openness it might be bringing your physical body, although that's a nice side effect, but you do the movement or the posture because of where it's bringing energy into your body. That's not to say some subtle Hatha practitioners are not tuned into that as well, but I'm thinking on the greater, wider practice of Hatha Yoga. People are not necessarily thinking of it from this perspective. And once you start to add the breath in, then everything is amplified. And this is what gives us the power and the vitality to start to A, observe where we're out of alignment with our inner self, and then B, start to have the power and the strength to make the change that's necessary to really bring us into alignment. So my love of Kundalini Yoga came alive when I had this recognition of the power of the navel point, for one, and this activation of energy. I was doing a Kriya in a Kundalini class with my beloved teacher, Guru Singh, and I was doing a strong breath of fire in a posture where you're really engaging your navel, stretch pose, for those of you who know it. And right after we did this intense thing for 2 minutes, we rested. And in that moment of rest, I felt this consolidation of energy at my navel point that was extraordinary. And I felt a deep state of peace just wash over my body. And for me, in that moment, it felt like I really came home to myself. That my outward projection of my personality self, that I was always wanting people, oh, love me, like me, approve of me, all of that suddenly dissolved, and I came into that sense of, oh, that's what it feels like to be home. So that little switch for me, that was all it took for me to absolutely fall in love with Kundalini Yoga. And want to take it deeper. So that's really what we access on the physical level. The physical and the energetic level. And then we get to the mental level. And this is again leads to the next point that I will be making, but about the systematic approach. If we are experiencing mental disorientation, disorganization, mental confusion, obsessive thinking, which takes many different forms and can be so debilitating. But if you're experiencing any of those things, you probably know how hard it is to stop that stream in mid-course and to choose to think about something else. You might be really obsessed about something, someone, and someone says to you, oh, just let it go. You're like, if only it was so easy. Or you may be experiencing depression, where you just can't seem to shake off that feeling of, why bother? Like, take me now, it's, And people will say, well, just think about something cheery or happy, and it's so hard to do that. So what I'm getting to here is that it's really hard to affect the mind with the mind. That is a skill that we can develop to change the course of our thoughts, but it takes a few steps beforehand. Again, it takes this idea of shifting stagnation out of the physical body and giving yourself enough vitality that you actually have that inner strength where, for example, if you are feeling depressed, you've got enough spark in you that you're like, okay, I'm going to just try one of these practices that I've been told is going to help. So you might actually do a breath of fire practice, for example, or something that could really help. And once we have then activated some energy and started to shift our awareness and our state of being, then the mind waves also start to shift. So it becomes a lot easier to create a little bit of distance between you and whatever mental state has been predominating. And when I say you, I mean that witness within you, that part that recognizes that you are not the thoughts, even though the thoughts may be dominating and they may seem to identify, and you may seem to be held in them to the degree where you are identified with them. But still understanding that the witness is that ability to see, well, that's thinking, that's an emotional state, that's a physical discomfort or pain, and be able to acknowledge and access the place where we're seeing it all. So what these yogic kriya practices do is they help us to shift our energetic state and vibration so that literally those things start to dissolve. Whatever's been preoccupying us starts to dissolve, and we start to really access a place of clarity where the mind is open. And I think that's important because so many of us are so intellectually dominant that we want to start to learn to access the place where the intellect is not driving the show, but we're starting to tap into the underlying wisdom of our being that really we can experience and access through this balancing on the energetic level. So I hope that that is making sense to you. And then once we can start to access that break in the hypnotic trance and pull of the surface mind, then we can begin to focus and direct the mind in the ways that we want it to go. And that's when meditation comes in to start to create, a sustained direction and concentration of the mind, which then again opens up deeper levels of awareness. So there's an infinity of what I could talk about here. The yoga system is vast, and there is so many intricacies and subtleties within it. But if we can just start to use the practices that can lift and elevate our energy and calm the mind on a daily basis, then wow, there's no telling what you unlock within yourself. So anyway, so on this last one, really, I wanted to talk about some key practices to bring into your daily life that can help you to access the vitality, the clarity, the radiance, etc. that I've been talking about a whole bunch. Before I do that, I'm just going to tune in and just see who all is in here. Tim, Ricardo, Simon, hi, and Jeff Franks. That's those of you that I can see initially here. Oh my goodness, it's so nice to see you all. Thanks for tuning in and taking a moment out of your day to just dwell on our awesomeness and the practices that really help us to awaken that. And for those of you who are teachers, I hope just taking some inspiration to add some of these practices into your classes and to, begin to inspire that kind of awakening energetic quality in people. Because the greatest joy for me when I teach Kriyas and Kundalini practices is seeing either the tears or the joy or the frustration, the sadness. To me, it doesn't matter what the emotion is. It's just seeing that the practices can move one out of a state of disconnection into a state where we get to feel what we need to feel and therefore move through it. And that's what we do when we access the energetic body in the way that I've been talking about. So some of you may have a daily practice already, and if you do, wonderful. My blessings to you, my gratitude to you, because every one of us who is tuning in on a daily basis to a personal practice and taking what do I call it? Just taking that initiative to self-reflect and self-correct. Anytime we're doing that for ourselves, we're doing it on a collective level as well. Every time our small individual being comes into a greater coherence and resonance with the higher awareness, then we create that subtle lift for everybody else. So every one of us that's doing a daily practice, think that you're not just doing it for yourself, but you're doing it for everybody. As we gain greater self-control, we are being a living example of gaining that self-control for others. So before we go any further, I just wanted to ask those of you who don't yet have a daily practice, I just want you to think about something that you do in your daily life that you kind of wish you didn't do, or that is not so important to you to do. And just have a moment to think about what that is. You know, there's many, sometimes, see the biggest thing I get to people when I say, can you initiate a home practice, is that I don't have time. And yet, I think we all have potentially more time than we think that we do. But it's what are the unnecessary things that we're doing that we could replace with something that was going to give us greater benefits, a greater boon to our health and our vitality. So then I want you to see you replacing whatever that is that you do that's maybe not so beneficial with a daily practice. And so pick a time of day that you could do your daily practice. In the yoga tradition, it's traditional to do it in the mornings. So you would do it in the morning. Or if that doesn't work for you, you do it in the evening. So you pick a time that you can do your practice, a time of day, and then you pick an amount of time. And what I'd love you guys to do is to do something every day that awakens and activates your navel point. The navel point is the way that we come into that energetic inner stability. So either doing pistoning of the legs or double leg lifts, inhale up, exhale down, something that starts to awaken and then stabilize the energy at the navel. Then what I'd love you guys to do is to do an ego eradicator pose. This comes from the tradition of Kundalini Yoga. It's a pumping of the navel where you pant like a dog. Make sure your belly is coming in. This just kind of teaches you how to do it. And then you do the same thing but with the mouth closed. Great, so you begin to stimulate that energy like I've been talking about. Then you bring your arms up, and just so you can see, my hands are like this. The fingers are bent, so the tip of the fingers is at the base of the fingers, and my thumbs are in an arc toward one another. My arms are at 60 degrees, and I do that breath for 3 minutes. You just be sitting with your eyes closed, focusing at your third eye. If you're on your menstrual cycle, you do the same thing with the arms, but you just do a long, deep breath and focus at the navel. What you do here is you enliven the energy, you lift it up because you're lifting the arms up. So the energy is drawn up towards the heart, it's drawn up to the throat, towards the third eye. So you start to, as you lift, and as I mentioned before, the energy gets more expansive, and you bring it into the higher centers. So you'll go from a more dense, gross, sort of mundane consciousness, if you like, to a more elevated, awakened consciousness. And that, I feel, is one of the best ways to set up your day. So do some leg work, navel work, then sit, do your ego eradicator, and then at the end, just so you can see, you'll inhale. Your arms are still above your head, but you bring the thumbs to touch. You take a deep inhale, you pause the breath, stretch the fingers, and then exhale. Arms come down. Finding ways to teach you this in the smaller screen. Then sit for about 3 minutes or so and just feel, tune in to the lightness of your being, that feeling of energy, the pure presence. Just aware of self, aware of surroundings, and follow the simple inhale, exhale. So I invite you to add that into your daily practice. So I want to just ask you guys, so those of you who practice already know the joys of the daily sadhana. But for those of you who don't, could you agree with me that if you implement this practice into your life, that you could start to shift things? That it could bring perhaps a little bit more mindfulness to you. Could you agree that from what you've heard, you could be more of a light to yourself and others? Often all it needs is this, that we settle in, we do something, we center ourselves, so that then no matter what is happening in our environment around us, we can act from that place of centeredness. So I hope we can all agree on that, and I hope that you guys will take this practice into your life. And so just a little recap. Kundalini Yoga, why is it an important practice for this day and age? It helps us to cut through the emotional and mental garbage that is holding us captive, making us think that we are less than what we are. There's a reason that people all over the world are getting ignited by Kundalini Yoga. It works. It cuts through the drama, the hypnosis. It gives us access to that sense of true peace, of true connectedness, and the infinite possibility that lives in each and every one of us. So that's why I personally love Kundalini Yoga, and I hope that you will come to love it too. Any of these pranic building practices. And then we looked at understanding how these practices are affecting us on the physical, emotional, and mental bodies. Keeping your physical body in shape so you're more sensitive to the practice. Doing the energetic breath practices because they lift your consciousness. They expand your sense of self and possibility. And then starting to access the mental level so that we're not a slave to the mind anymore, but the mind starts to be servant to the soul. When we access that place, we are masters. There's no doubt. You access the place where your mind is serving the soul, and now suddenly, as the Guru Nanak says in one of the Sikh prayers, then the world will bow before you. And that's what we're looking for here in this time when the world really needs leaders. It needs us to step up. And we want to be systematic in our approach so that we move through the more gross things that we've been holding first, and then we start to get to a subtler and subtler place. And we want to be doing this through implementing a daily practice. So I hope that you can take something out of what I've said that's very applicable to you right now. In fact, I'm sure that if you just take the practice that I shared and some of the ideas that I've shared and you implement them in your life, that you will start to see the subtle shifts and the opening where you feel more in the flow. So I invite you to try that. And then the next level, I would say, is if you really would love to access a deeper level with personal guidance, then please, come check out something that we at Radiant Body Yoga are doing. One of the trainings we're doing, one of the immersions we're doing, some place where myself or some of our senior teachers can guide you in moving through whatever it is that you feel you want to move through, and accessing deeper levels of connection, awareness, creativity, bliss, or whatever that is that you're working on. So there's many opportunities to do that, and you can check them out on my website, kiamiller.com. Come to Esalen, come to India. Jayalakshmi and Ananda, these incredible musicians, are joining me in India, and we're diving into mantra and the yoga of sound. That's in November. In September, if you want to learn more about this systematic process of Kriya, of how Kriya really opens and moves the energy so beautifully, then come and check that out. It's in September in Los Angeles. And there's more stuff on the website. So just know that if you're here, if you're listening, there's something calling you into an alignment with yourself. And I'm just here to say that in my experience, the blessing of all the teachers in the lineage of Kundalini Yoga is that this practice works. And this is a practice for this time. And this is not just me saying it. I'm regurgitating what my teachers told me that has led to my own direct experience. And I really just would love to share that with you. So sending you all love and blessings and light. And thank you for joining me. And have an awesome rest of your day. Practice tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. Create that sacred time for yourself, and watch what happens in this world of evolution, in this world of stepping into the seat of leadership and standing up for all of the elevated qualities of love, compassion, kindness. Let us be that embodiment for all. Satnam, thank you, yogis, blessings.